Hey guys, tonight we're tackling something more relentless than a toddler with a toy drum set. Life as a 1950s housewife, back when modern appliances were just a fever dream and your main source of entertainment was the slow, methodical drip of your percolator. So before you settle in, take a second to like the video and subscribe, but only if you actually enjoy what I do here. Seriously, don't feel pressured. Leave a comment letting me know where you're listening from and whether your socks ever match. Now dim the lights, crank up your fan to block out the sound of imaginary children bickering, and snuggle in, preferably under blankets that do not smell like last night's casserole. Let's pause for a second. Have you ever wondered how people used to clean a house when the fanciest gadget was a broom that doubled as a back scratcher? Did you ever picture yourself trying to wrangle 6 kids, a dog and a casserole all before lunch, with nothing but elbow grease, a day dress, and the occasional existential crisis? Would you survive a day where time-saving meant ironing your husband's socks? Could you bake bread, scrub floors, sew buttons, and somehow still whip up a Jell-O mold that looked vaguely like a suburban nightmare? Would you make it through the morning or collapse by noon, gently sobbing into your dishwater? And now, congratulations, you've just woken up in 1953. You're standing in a tidy kitchen, hair perfectly curled, wearing an apron that's seen more stains than a detective on a crime show. The sun is rising, the radio is playing Doris Day, and your to-do list is longer than your grocery receipt. Good luck. The alarm doesn't ring, it shrieks. You fumble awake before sunrise, prying yourself from the warmth of your starched sheets to the sound of imaginary roosters and the real dread of a never-ending day. Welcome to 1950s Suburbia, where your morning coffee is more lifeline than luxury. You open your eyes and immediately question every life choice that led to this moment. The room is a museum of floral wallpaper and heavy curtains drawn against the early light. But there's no hiding from what's about to happen. Somewhere downstairs, a radio cheerfully plays a tune you will grow to resent by Thursday. Your feet hit the cold linoleum, and that chill is the universe's gentle reminder that central heating is a distant fantasy. You reach for your robe, a garment less cozy sanctuary and more permanent evidence of exhaustion, and begin the great daily migration toward the kitchen. The clock blinks a time that should be illegal. You stare at it, half hoping the numbers will apologize. No such luck. Ooh. Out in the hallway, the house creaks with the kind of anticipation only vintage plumbing and children plotting breakfast mutinies can generate. You shuffle down the hall, eyes barely open, dodging stray marbles and one spectacularly pointy toy soldier. No one told you that the 1950s morning is an obstacle course designed by gremlins. Down in the kitchen, the work begins. First, you light the stove, a process involving matches, prayer, and a stubborn burner that resists modernity at every turn. Coffee percolates with the urgency of an emergency broadcast. You clutch the chipped mug like it's the Holy Grail. The taste is sharp, black, and slightly metallic, perfect for jump-starting a nervous system that would rather stay in bed until the Eisenhower administration is over. The first wave of children descends, half-dressed, wild-haired, already squabbling about the bathroom schedule. Your referee, chef, and motivational speaker rolled into one. The family's needs crash over you in waves. Oatmeal here, toast there, an existential crisis over missing socks thrown in for fun. The kitchen fills with steam, noise, and the unmistakable aroma of burning toast, an olfactory alarm clock all its own. You orchestrate breakfast like a symphony conductor who's lost her baton and is now waving a spatula. Milk spills, cereal explodes, the dog makes off with half a pancake, and still you press on. If you're lucky, you manage a few sips of coffee between negotiating truces over whose turn it is to sit by the window and whose fault it is that the orange juice is warm. Someone always needs a note for school, which you forge with a flourish that would make a Broadway producer proud. There is no Instagram in 1953, but if there were, Your morning routine would be flagged for excessive realism. You smooth hair, tie shoes, and field questions about existential matters, like why the sky is blue and why Dad's socks always match but no one else's do. You contemplate faking your own death, just for 5 minutes of peace, but settle for hiding in the pantry and eating the last half of a crumbling cookie. As the last child escapes out the door with lunchbox in hand and shoes on, possibly the wrong feet, you pause, breathing in the silence. The clock says it's barely 8, but you've already lived a lifetime. The sun streams through the window and briefly everything glows with that golden ideal housewife light you've seen in magazines. Except, of course, you're standing in yesterday's robe, your slippers are mismatched, and the only thing on your face is determination and a little bit of jam. Outside, a neighbour waves, coiffed and composed, as if she didn't just face her own private circus. You wave back, an unspoken camaraderie passing between you, another day in paradise. You made it to 8:05 a.m., and so the relentless ritual continues, coffee reheated, chores multiplying, and the subtle hope that maybe, just maybe, tomorrow's alarm will have a snooze button. But for now, you start again, fueled by caffeine, courage, and the knowledge that every day survived is a quiet little miracle of its own. The kitchen is spotless, or at least it's supposed to be. Every crumb is an affront to your reputation. You scrub linoleum until it shines with a suspicious wet gleam, all while dodging errant Cheerios and the existential question: why is there always one sticky spot you can't find? You've barely survived breakfast, but the real work is just beginning. Forget about yoga, mindfulness, or self-care. Your inner peace depends on the reflective quality of your countertops. In 1953, the kitchen isn't just the heart of the home, it's a high-stakes battleground. Every visitor, neighbour, or child is a potential spy for the cleanliness police. Rumour travels faster than spilled sugar, and somewhere down the block, Mrs. Patterson is just waiting to see a stray coffee ring so she can bring it up at the next PTA meeting. This isn't cleaning. This is social survival. So you grab your trusty rag, a faded, checkered companion that has seen things, unspeakable things. There are 2 accepted cleaning products, Sudsy water and elbow grease. For tougher jobs, there's always baking soda and the whispered hope that today will be the day you defeat the grease monster lurking behind the stove. You kneel, you stretch, you reach into corners previously reserved for lost forks and petrified peas. If archaeologists ever excavate 1950s kitchens, they'll find entire civilizations living beneath the fridge. There's choreography to this work. Sweep, wipe, rinse, repeat. Each pass of the cloth erases evidence of breakfast chaos, but new messes pop up faster than you can say sanitary. The children are gone, but their trail remains. Fingerprints on the refrigerator, smears of jelly on the cabinet handle, and what might be a small shoe print inexplicably wedged into the bread box. The linoleum floor is a canvas of mysterious spots, each one a coded message in a language only you can decipher. Spilled milk, muddy footprints, a splatter of ketchup from last night's fun dinner. You scrub the sink until it sparkles like a dentist's dream, the scent of lemon cleanser promising a fresh start. It's soothing, this ritual, even as your hands begin to wrinkle and your back protests. Cleaning in the 1950s isn't a sprint, it's an all-day endurance event, complete with surprise challenges like remove this burned-on pan, or why does the trash can smell like betrayal? You open the windows and let in a breeze, only for it to deposit a brand new layer of pollen and a very optimistic fly. Appliances, such as they are, offer limited help. The fridge hums its discontent. The oven, built sometime between the Pleistocene and now, requires constant cajoling to avoid burning everything or nothing at all. There is no dishwasher, only your own 10 fingers and the faded hope that maybe someday technology will save you. Dishes pile up in the sink like a miniature skyscraper, threatening to collapse at the slightest provocation. Your hands are so often submerged in hot soapy water that you begin to suspect you're developing webbed fingers, which honestly might help you keep up. Of course, this labour isn't just for you. It's for the family, for the neighbours, and for the magazine ads tacked to the refrigerator, all promising that a truly immaculate kitchen means you're winning at life. Never mind that your nerves are frayed and your shoulders ache in places you didn't know existed. Cleanliness is the currency of self-worth, and every spot you erase is a tiny declaration that you are, in fact, holding the chaos at bay. You pause just for a moment and admire your work. The counters gleam, the floor sparkles, the sink radiates with an almost spiritual energy. You inhale the scent of fresh lemons, with just a hint of detergent and pride. And yet that sticky spot remains, taunting you from somewhere near the pantry. You kneel, you search, you surrender. Maybe some mysteries were never meant to be solved. The kitchen stands ready for its next invasion, a child's snack, an unexpected guest, or the daily onslaught of life. For now, you have achieved the impossible. The kitchen is immaculate, if only for a minute. You savour the silence and the soft echo of your own victory, knowing full well that tomorrow it all begins again. It's not just breakfast. It's a logistical operation that involves eggs, toast, bacon, cereal, and approximately 14 different complaints. Your spatula is your scepter, your frying pan a shield, and the threat of no TV after dinner your only weapon. Welcome to the Oatmeal Olympics, an event held every morning right in your kitchen, where you compete for gold in the categories of speed, endurance, and not crying before 8 a.m. The participants? Your family. The stakes? Nothing less than the fragile illusion of household order. Somewhere, a commercial on the radio promises the perfect morning, but here, perfection is simply defined as everyone being fed, dressed, and not actively fighting before sunrise. The clock on the wall ticks menacingly, reminding you that you have precisely 7 minutes to transform the raw chaos of your kitchen into something resembling a meal. The coffee percolator bubbles like an overcaffeinated volcano, its aroma barely masking the undercurrent of burnt toast. The kitchen is already humming with activity. Kids are banging utensils like tiny blacksmiths. Your husband rustles the newspaper in the next room, and the dog is giving you a hopeful stare just in case you drop a stray sausage. You do the mental math. 2 kids want oatmeal, 1 wants cornflakes, another demands eggs like last week, but cooked less slimy, more fluffy. Your husband, the traditionalist, requests bacon and toast, the kind that's toasted but not burnt this time, please. And for yourself? You'd settle for a hot cup of coffee and 5 consecutive minutes where nobody shouts your name, but dreams are for people with free time. First, you stage the ingredients. A loaf of bread. White, always white. Whole wheat is for health nuts and hippies. A carton of eggs. A mysterious slab of bacon that's been living in the fridge since Eisenhower's first term. And of course, the infamous quick oats. The frying pan sizzles as you juggle eggs and bacon with the dexterity of a short-order cook on a tightrope. You perfect the mom multitask, stirring the oatmeal, flipping the eggs, and listening for suspicious silences, which always mean trouble. The complaints roll in, right on schedule. The oatmeal is too lumpy. The toast is too brown. The eggs are too eggy. One child is convinced you've ruined his entire week by serving milk in the blue cup instead of the green one. You launch into your usual speech about gratitude, but you know deep down it's a losing battle. No one in 1953 eats breakfast without a side of existential drama. Halfway through, you have to stop a minor rebellion over who gets the good spoon and mediate a full-scale negotiation regarding the division of bacon slices. The dog, sensing weakness, makes a daring attempt at the cereal bowl and is unceremoniously exiled from the kitchen. You catch your husband sneaking extra butter onto his toast and resist the urge to comment, knowing it's a battle for another day. Despite the chaos, there's a strange rhythm to it all. The clang of cutlery, the babble of conversation, the steam curling from the oatmeal pot. It's the music of the mid-century morning. You wield your spatula with the confidence of a seasoned gladiator, scraping up the last bits of scrambled egg, plating toast like a Michelin chef, and doing your best impression of a TV mom who never sweats. Finally, the plates are served. A minor miracle, everyone is seated, mostly clothed, and no one is bleeding. You let yourself enjoy a quiet moment, the rare peace that settles over the table when mouths are full and hands are busy. The sun filters through the window, casting a warm glow over the cluttered table. For a fleeting second, it almost looks like the pictures in those glossy magazines. Of course, peace is brief. Someone asks if there's any orange juice, and the great juice debate erupts anew. But you don't mind. You've survived another round of the Oatmeal Olympics. You may not get a medal, but you get something better. The knowledge that, with a little luck and a lot of patience, you'll do it all again tomorrow. Because in the end, breakfast isn't about perfection. It's about showing up every single morning, spatula in hand, ready to face whatever absurd challenge your hungry household throws at you next. Shoes are missing, lunch boxes are mysteriously empty, and one child is insisting on bringing a frog to school. You herd your brood like a caffeine-deprived border collie, already negotiating peace treaties over who gets the good seat in the station wagon. Welcome to the morning migration, the daily adventure that makes you long for the comparative peace of cleaning up after a barn fire. The 1950s may promise order, pressed collars, and wholesome routines, but real life in suburbia is a stampede of half-dressed children, desperate pets, and a growing suspicion that no one in the house has ever learned to tell time. Your nerves are already stretched thin from refereeing breakfast. Now, as the clock ticks down, you brace yourself for the next Olympic event, getting everyone out the door before someone calls child services. It starts innocently enough. Time to get ready. You sing, like Julie Andrews if she were 2 coffees short of a tune. Your request is met with blank stares, a few groans, and at least one child wandering off in the direction of absolutely nowhere. In the distance, the school bus rumbles by, far too early as usual, reminding you that you have precisely 8 minutes before the neighbourhood witnesses the full chaos of your morning. You issue orders like a field marshal, brandishing hairbrushes and unmatched socks. One child is still in pyjamas, convinced that pyjama day is a universal right. Another stands staring into the fridge as if the meaning of life might be hiding behind the mayonnaise. There's a brief, passionate debate over who owns which raincoat, and in the background the youngest is actively negotiating with her frog. You'll like first grade, trust me. They have snacks. Somewhere between collecting spelling homework and diffusing a crisis over the fairness of banana distribution, you discover a lunchbox packed with nothing but a single cracker and a crumpled note that says, "I owe you." You try to recall if you packed it last night or if this is an early sign of rebellion. Either way, you add invent lunch to your to-do list and start raiding the pantry like a raccoon on a sugar high. Shoes are next, always the shoes. There's one by the door, another under the couch, and the third, yes, third, on the windowsill for reasons that defy logic. You crawl on hands and knees, cursing the inventor of shoelaces and briefly fantasizing about a family-wide switch to sandals. In the corner, the dog is having an existential crisis, unsure if he's coming along or being left behind. You reassure him with a treat and a pat, knowing full well he'll try to sneak into the car the moment your back is turned. At last, the herd assembles at the front door. Coats are halfway on, hats are definitely not regulation, and at least 2 children are holding mysterious sticky objects that you will not question until after drop-off. The station wagon, your battered chariot, waits in the driveway, a beacon of hope and upholstery cleaner. The battle for the good seat commences. Deals are struck, alliances are forged and broken, and you threaten to revoke radio privileges for a week if peace isn't restored. Miraculously, an uneasy truce is reached. You count heads, bags, and appendages, then double-check for contraband frogs. One last dash back inside for forgotten mittens, and you're finally, miraculously, on your way. The ride to school is a blur of show-and-tell rehearsals, rogue Cheerios, and the universal sibling soundtrack. He's touching me. No, I'm not. Moom. As you pull up to the curb, you watch your crew spill out in all directions, half-dressed, mostly intact, and at least vaguely prepared for learning. You exhale, heart pounding, and give yourself silent credit for another successful launch. The house is finally quiet. You did it. The herd has been wrangled, at least until 3 p.m, and as you drive home you wonder, did other 1950s mums face this? Almost certainly. Did June Cleaver ever have to fish a frog out of her purse? Maybe not. But you, my friend, are living history, and you deserve a medal, or at the very least another cup of coffee. The laundry pile is less a chore and more a geological formation, washing, scrubbing, wringing, and hanging it all out to dry, because spin cycle is something your brain does at 2 a.m, not your washing machine. You stand before the mountain, strata of socks, shirts, mysterious towels, and at least 3 sweaters that no one in the house will ever admit to owning. Somewhere deep within, a single gym sock pulses like the molten core of the earth, emitting a scent that could power a new kind of energy grid. In 1953, laundry isn't a weekly event, it's a lifestyle. The machine in the corner is more loud suggestion than appliance, and you suspect it's unionized with the iron against you. The day begins with the ceremonial sorting of the colours. This isn't about fashion, it's about preventing pink underpants and household mutiny. Whites here, colours there. The maybe burn these pile for anything the dog got to first. Every garment is inspected for stains, mysterious smells, and signs of life. The children pass by, each dropping socks and handkerchiefs as breadcrumbs, marking a trail of where they've been and what they've destroyed. You fill the tub, yes, an actual tub, because the automatic washing machine is more optimistic than factual. Soap flakes swirl like a snowstorm, and you prepare your hands for another round of underwater boxing. Scrubbing is an art form. Knuckles white, jaw set. You attack collars and cuffs as if you're erasing not just dirt but the very memory of spaghetti night. Sometimes you wonder if your family uses their clothes as napkins on purpose, just to see if you'll snap. Then comes the rinse, the water a murky testament to the chaos of suburban life. If your knuckles aren't red and raw, you're not doing it right. Now for the wringing, the medieval torture segment. You twist, you squeeze, and you pray the seams hold. The children wander by again, offering help that mostly involves flicking water onto the floor or turning pillowcases into makeshift hats. You'd scold them, but you're too busy trying not to drop a sopping towel onto your bare foot. Hanging laundry is less a domestic task and more a physical comedy routine. Outside, the clothesline sways in the breeze, and you trudge through the yard like a determined explorer, arms full of laundry, eyes scanning for rogue squirrels. Each clothespin is a precious commodity, and you develop a proprietary system for maximizing line space. Socks dangle from shirts, towels serve as foundation for an entire ecosystem of drying undergarments. Wind gusts threaten your hard work, launching a bra into the neighbour's rose bush. You briefly contemplate leaving it there as an offering to the domestic gods. The sky naturally chooses this moment to darken. You look up, make a silent plea, and race to secure the last sheet before the rain arrives. Of course, there's always that one rebellious item, the fitted sheet, that refuses to hang straight, instead gathering itself into a wrinkled pile of defiance. By afternoon, the sun finally does its work. You gather the now crispy shirts, inhale that unique scent of sun, grass, and vague hope, and drag your prize back inside. You marvel, briefly, at the accomplishment. The laundry pile is gone, vanished. You almost expect applause. But then, as you stand victorious, you hear the thud of a baseball in the mud, the distant cry of "oops," and the unmistakable appearance of a new, suspiciously stained shirt. Defeat is temporary. Laundry is forever. And so you reload the tub, flex your aching hands, and prepare to start again. There's a peculiar comfort in the cycle, a rhythm to the ringing, and a deep historical camaraderie with every person, past or present, who has stood before a pile of dirty socks and thought, surely this wasn't in the wedding vows. And as you drift off to sleep tonight, know this: your family may never understand the epic saga of laundry, but you, the fabric warrior, are undefeated, at least until tomorrow. Tomato sauce, grass, and the mysterious brown blob. Each stain is a riddle wrapped in a mystery, dunked in soap flakes, and pounded on the washboard like a tiny fabric-based vendetta. In the 1950s, stain removal is less a simple household task, and more a test of willpower and chemistry skills that would make a NASA scientist weep. The kitchen table doubles as your laboratory, complete with an arsenal of soap flakes, baking soda, vinegar, and whatever that blue stuff in the glass bottle is. Nobody knows, but Grandma swore it could dissolve anything short of the family silverware. The day's laundry is never complete without at least one epic battle against a spot determined to become part of family lore. You begin your forensic investigation. Who is the culprit? The youngest, whose dinner plate is more Jackson Pollock than nutrition. The middle child, always one grass stain away from single-handedly ruining every pair of pants. Or is it your spouse, who manages to spill coffee in a pattern suspiciously resembling the state of Nebraska? Some stains come with stories. Others you don't want to know. First comes the reconnaissance. You squint at the fabric under the harsh kitchen light, muttering like a seasoned detective. Is it food? Ink? Something best left unclassified? The rules are simple. Treat first, ask questions never. You call upon every home remedy you've heard from neighbours, friends, or that one advice column in Good Housekeeping that claims a little lemon juice will fix almost anything, including marriage. The ritual unfolds. For tomato sauce, you soak, you blot, and you pray to the culinary gods. For grass, you deploy a bar of laundry soap so harsh it's probably banned in 4 countries. For ink, it's milk, salt, and the desperate hope that no one ever looks too closely at your white blouses. As for the mysterious brown blob, you take a deep breath and decide to wage war. Soap, water, elbow grease, and perhaps a little existential pleading. Next is the washboard, a medieval torture device still found in respectable homes across the country. Each pass over its ridges is accompanied by a whispered bargain. If this comes out, I'll never let them eat spaghetti in their Sunday best again. You scrub, you rinse, you repeat. Sometimes you pause, squinting in frustration at the stubborn mark. I see you, you mutter, and the stain, sensing your resolve, digs in deeper. As you work, the kitchen fills with the scent of soap and a gentle background hum of determination. The stain removal process is oddly meditative, your hands red and raw, moving in time with the quiet rhythm of a bygone era. Outside, the world might be moving toward jet engines and television sets, but inside, you're locked in a timeless struggle against the evidence of everyday life. There's no such thing as a miracle cleaner, only a variety of chemical assaults and ancient wisdom. Vinegar for coffee, baking soda for mysterious odours. The secret weapon, passed down from generation to generation, is simply refusing to give up. You've seen stains disappear, and you've seen them stubbornly hang on for years, their outlines like ghostly reminders of meals past. When you finally rinse the fabric for the last time, you hold it up to the light. Sometimes the stain is gone, erased by sheer force of will. Sometimes it lingers, faded but defiant, a battle lost but a war still in progress. You pin the fabric to the clothesline, letting the sun and wind lend a final helping hand. And if all else fails, there's always the timeless solution. Call it a play shirt and move on. As night falls, your fingers ache and your patience is threadbare, but there's a quiet pride in your work. The perilous path of stain removal is never really finished. Tomorrow there will be new stains, new mysteries, new vendettas, new tiny catastrophes to erase. And as you drift towards sleep, let yourself rest in the knowledge that, in the great ledger of domestic history, you are undefeated for another day. The stains will return, but so will you, armed with soap, hope, and a heart stubborn enough to never give in. Nothing says domestic bliss like pressing endless collars and pleats. Your iron is a medieval torture device, hissing at you as you battle the forces of creased cotton and marital expectations. The ritual of ironing begins long before the iron is even plugged in. First, there's the gathering of the garments, a slow procession of shirts, blouses, handkerchiefs, and whatever else managed to escape the wringer's vice grip with its wrinkles intact. You lay them out on the board, which is somehow both rock-hard and wobbly, teetering with every determined swipe. The cover is a faded floral, its pattern obscured by the scorch marks of battles past. You eye the iron, sitting there smug and heavy, daring you to turn your back. The iron in question is not the sleek, steam-powered wonder promised by futuristic magazine ads. This beast is solid metal, weighing approximately the same as a small child, and heats up with a kind of intensity that makes you question your home insurance. You gingerly test the surface, a mistake you repeat daily, then begin, always starting with the good shirts. There's a right way to do this, you remind yourself. Collars first, then cuffs, then the endless planes of shirt body and sleeves. You work in clouds of steam, hoping the humidity will chase the wrinkles away and not just give you an impromptu facial. The hiss of the iron is constant, a low warning that it will scorch anything left unattended for longer than a single distracted thought. There's no such thing as a quick touch-up. One careless pause and you're rewarded with a perfect iron-shaped tattoo, an ancient symbol for someone got distracted by the radio. Of course, this is all performed under the critical gaze of family members who have never in their lives wielded an iron but always have opinions. Why does my shirt have a crease here? Can you make the pleats sharper? This tablecloth needs to look crisp for bridge night. Requests multiply faster than the wrinkles. Your spouse, in particular, expects a standard of pressed cotton perfection that only exists in department store windows and the fever dreams of 1950's advertisers. You nod, serene on the outside, as your inner monologue invents new uses for a hot iron. With each shirt you fight a battle against physics. Cotton refuses to cooperate, folding and bunching in defiance of your best intentions. Stubborn wrinkles leap from one spot to another, like mischievous spirits. You stretch, you spray, you curse quietly into the clouds of steam. The iron, meanwhile, radiates heat through your fingers, making you question whether blisters are simply the price of love, or just evidence that you're doing it right. Somewhere in the midst of this, the phone rings, the dog barks, and a child appears, requesting a costume for a school play. Can you iron my cape? Sure, why not? You pause to smooth the fabric, reflect briefly on your life choices, and return to the pile, now twice as large as when you started. The kitchen timer goes off, reminding you there's also dinner to worry about, but ironing demands your full attention. There's a certain trance to the process, the repetition, the hiss, the careful swipe, the soft clatter as a finished shirt is placed lovingly on a hanger ready to be wrinkled by the nearest family member in under 10 seconds. There are moments, brief, shining moments, when a shirt emerges perfectly flat, seams crisp, looking almost new. In these moments, you feel a quiet, triumphant pride, the same kind ancient warriors must have felt upon returning victorious from battle. But just as quickly, the next item emerges. A pleated skirt, a ruffled blouse, an evil pair of slacks with creases designed by a sadist. You power through, hands aching, patience thinning, knowing that somewhere out there, a future filled with wrinkle-resistant fabrics and home dry cleaning awaits. But for now you iron on, a silent guardian of pressed laundry, a lone soldier in the endless war on wrinkles, and when at last you switch off the iron, stretch your aching arms, and hang up the last shirt, you breathe deep. You survived. The laundry is pressed, your family is presentable, and your dignity, if slightly scorched, remains intact. Wrinkles will return, and so will you, iron in hand, ready for tomorrow's round. Because nothing says love quite like the perfect crease, and nothing says perseverance like doing it all again, week after wrinkled week. There's no mechanical saviour here, just your hands, some cracked rubber gloves, and a dubious promise from your mother-in-law that doing dishes builds character. You rinse, you scrub, and you pray no one use the good china for peanut butter. Welcome to the sudsy underworld of 1950's dishwashing, a nightly ritual where the only cycle is the never-ending one of plates, pans, and hope. The meal is over, the table's been cleared, with varying enthusiasm, and now you face a sink brimming with greasy evidence that, yes, your family is somehow eating for a football team. If you're lucky, someone else will help, which generally means stacking more plates in precarious towers and then vanishing as soon as the first glass hits the water. The faucet's drip is the soundtrack of the hour. You start with hot water, as hot as your skin can tolerate, just shy of boiling, just enough to let you pretend the scalding sensation is cleansing your soul along with the silverware. You swirl in soap flakes or a squirt of pale green liquid, watch bubbles rise and wish for a magical fairy godmother who could wave a wand and make the casserole dish disappear. Instead, it's just you, a battered sponge, and the knowledge that somewhere there's a crust of dried cheese growing more powerful by the minute. You begin with the easy stuff, glasses and cups, each one gently swirled and rinsed to a squeaky shine. There's a moment of meditative peace as the water runs clear until someone adds a mug with a ring of coffee darker than your outlook on laundry day. Next, you tackle the plates. Each one is a canvas of family chaos, ketchup swirls, bacon grease hieroglyphics, and the sticky remains of this morning's oatmeal that somehow has fossilized into a new mineral. Then come the utensils, a minefield of forks bent at odd angles and knives bearing the scars of battle against overcooked roasts. The spoons are especially treacherous, hiding blobs of mashed potato that cling stubbornly to every curve. You try not to think about the one fork that always seems to disappear until someone steps on it barefoot. The real war, though, is with the pots and pans. Each is a new episode of Will It Soak or Will You Cry? You pour in water, add a generous dash of elbow grease, and hope for a miracle. The lasagna pan resists all efforts, a culinary monument to baked-on determination. You scrub and scrape, the kitchen filling with the gentle soundtrack of muttered curses and clinking enamel. All the while, your rubber gloves, cracked, faded, and suspiciously sticky, slowly fill with water, adding an element of wet surprise to every movement. You'd get a new pair, but these have character, or at least that's what you tell yourself as you wring them out for the 100th time. A drop of soapy water trails down your arm, and you sigh, resigned to the fact that dishpan hands are a badge of honour. Meanwhile, the kitchen is never empty. Children wander in, scavenging for post-dinner snacks and leaving fingerprints on every clean surface. Your spouse drifts by with a casual, "Need any help?" which is your cue to hand them a towel, only for them to suddenly remember they left the radio on in the garage. You're left alone with the bubbles, the radio playing softly, and the growing suspicion that the good china will, in fact, never recover from its brush with peanut butter. At last, the final plate is rinsed and set on the rack, wobbling like a medal on display. You stand back, hands wrinkled, arms aching, and admire your work. The kitchen gleams, the sink is empty, for at least 5 minutes, and you've once again proven that resilience is forged in the quiet, sudsy trenches. As you turn off the tap and dry your hands, you wonder, will anyone notice? Maybe, maybe not. But in this small, gleaming victory, you know you've survived another round. The dishwasher will come one day, but tonight it's just you, your gloves, and a piece earned one plate at a time. Dust bunnies multiply faster than the kids. Every sweep is a Sisyphean task, and mopping is less about cleanliness and more about avoiding sticky feet for 10 blessed minutes. In the grand theatre of 1950s housework, the floor is both stage and adversary, a battleground where order and entropy are locked in endless combat. Somewhere in those glossy magazine ads, immaculate floors shimmer under the approving gaze of a smiling housewife. In reality, you're armed with a broom that's lost half its bristles and a bucket that leaks just enough to create a slip hazard. You don't so much conquer the dirt as negotiate its temporary withdrawal. You start with the sweeping, a chore that's supposed to take just a minute, but quickly turns into an archaeological dig. Under the kitchen table you find a fossil record of family life. Cheerios from last week, a petrified grape, one button, and enough crumbs to feed a small flock of sparrows. No one knows where the sand comes from, but you suspect the children are running a small beach out of their pockets. The dust bunnies are sentient, growing larger with every pass, gathering in corners and plotting a soft revolution. There's a rhythm to the sweeping, a gentle scratch-swish sigh as you corral debris into ever larger piles. The goal, theoretically, is to get it all into the dustpan, but the dustpan, by unspoken law, never quite fits flush against the floor. Instead, you engage in an intricate ballet, sweep, chase, and finally surrender as the last line of crumbs escapes under the baseboard. You briefly consider moving the fridge to sweep behind it, but then remember you have a life to live and joints to protect. Once the dust has been subdued, or merely relocated, it's time for mopping. You fill the bucket, add a splash of something blue, and soak the mop, an object whose origins predate the space program and whose strings are permanently curled from battles lost and won. The water is scalding, the soap scented with chemical optimism, and the floor is a patchwork of old linoleum tiles, each hiding secrets beneath their cheerful colours. You mop with the determination of a prize fighter and the resignation of someone who knows this will last exactly as long as it takes for a child to sprint through with muddy shoes. Every sticky spot is a riddle. Is it juice, jam, regret? And every pass of the mop is a small act of hope. You scrub, you wring, you pass again, creating momentary islands of cleanliness in an ocean of potential disaster. The mop leaves streaks, the streaks leave existential questions. Do floors ever truly get clean? Or are we just moving the dirt around in new and interesting patterns? The household swirls around you as you work. The dog wanders in, does a careful sniff test, and promptly deposits a fresh paw print in your wake. A child appears, balancing a precarious glass of grape juice, and you freeze in horror until they exit, miraculously unscathed. Your spouse chooses this moment to suggest that maybe tomorrow is a good day to wax the hallway, and you resist the urge to throw the mop like a javelin. By the time you reach the end of the hall, your arms ache, your back twinges, and your sense of accomplishment is overshadowed by the knowledge that somewhere, at this very moment, someone is dropping a cracker on the freshly cleaned floor. But for a few glorious minutes, you bask in the feeling of bare feet on a cool, smooth surface, unburdened by grit, grime, or mystery stickiness. You stand victorious, if only briefly. The floor shines, the air smells faintly of lemons and resolve, and you allow yourself to dream of a world where cleanliness lasts longer than a cup of coffee. History may forget your daily heroics, but you will always remember, in the floor wars, you fight, you lose, you sweep again. And maybe, just maybe, tomorrow the dust bunnies will show some mercy. Soap scum, toothpaste blobs, and the eerie feeling you're being judged by the ghost of your grandmother. You wield your brush like Excalibur, armed with ammonia, vinegar, and pure, undiluted spite. The bathroom, a domestic arena where dignity goes to die and grime multiplies unchecked. In the magazines, it's a sparkling white oasis, gleaming tiles, fluffy towels, maybe a vase of artfully arranged carnations. In real life, it's an ever-evolving science experiment. The soap scum forms new continents along the sink. The mirror is a living scrapbook of every toothpaste explosion and frantic morning splash. And that faint mildew smell, it's just your old pal, humidity, returning for another visit. You approach the task like a knight entering a dragon's lair, cautious, strategic, hoping to emerge with both pride and fingernails intact. First, you open the window, not for ventilation, but to let the neighbours hear the epic battle about to unfold. The cleaning supplies are laid out with military precision, the heavy-duty ammonia for stains that fear neither man nor God, a bottle of vinegar because your mother swears by it, and a collection of brushes and rags that look suspiciously like they've seen active combat. The tub is your first opponent. Here, generations of soap scum and hard water deposits form a crust that could withstand a nuclear blast. You scrub with determination, muscles burning, the brush squeaking out a protest with every pass. You wonder if scientists will one day discover a new element in your grout. Perhaps scumium, the household substance with a half-life longer than your patience. The ring around the tub is a badge of honour for the family and a source of shame for you, the sole guardian of hygiene. Next up, the sink. The porcelain is no longer white, but a patchwork of mysterious stains and faded optimism. Toothpaste has been used with the reckless abandon of a toddler set loose with finger paints. Someone has left a shaving relic, tiny hairs clinging to the rim like survivors on a lifeboat. You attack them with a vengeance, brandishing your scrubber, muttering promises that next time everyone will rinse properly. You both know that's a lie. Then comes the toilet, a porcelain throne that inspires equal parts dread and resignation. You arm yourself with gloves, brush, and a steely resolve, plunging into a cleaning ritual worthy of myth and legend. You scrub, flush, and douse the bowl with every cleaner in your arsenal, pausing only to reflect on how you ended up here, battling bacteria like a medieval apothecary gone rogue. The mirror is last, a cruel overseer that reflects not only your face but the entire morning's chaos. You spritz, wipe, and try to erase the streaks, only to realise that, much like happiness, true clarity is fleeting and usually dependent on the weather. Behind you, the towels dangle at odd angles, and the shower curtain has resigned itself to permanent dampness. Throughout it all, you can feel your grandmother's spirit hovering nearby, her silence a gentle reminder that a clean bathroom is a reflection of your soul. You wonder if her soul ever had to scrub bubble gum from the grout, or chase a runaway rubber ducky under the radiator. Probably not. As you step back and survey your work, the scent of ammonia tingles in your nose and the bathroom gleams almost. The soap scum is temporarily banished. The surfaces shine with exhausted pride, and you permit yourself a small, victorious sigh. You survived. For now. But as history teaches, the battle is never truly over. The bathroom will regroup, rallying toothpaste, scum, and mystery hairs for tomorrow's assault. But tonight, you have won. So light a candle, hang a fresh towel, and reward yourself with the forbidden pleasure of a bath. You've earned it, domestic night, until next week when the soap scum will rise again. Spotless windows are the ultimate status symbol. Unfortunately, they are also magnets for fingerprints, dog noses, and the neighbour's disapproval. You scrub and polish until you can see your own exhausted reflection. In 1950s Suburbia, window washing isn't just a cleaning task, it's a public declaration of self-worth. The magazines all agree, a truly successful housewife has windows so clear the mailman risks walking into them. On paper, the process is simple. Just a bit of vinegar, a swipe of newspaper, and voila. In practice, it's a marathon of streaks, sweat, and existential musings about whether the smudges on the inside are somehow a metaphor for your soul. You begin with ambition. The sun is shining, the birds are singing, and you're armed with a spray bottle and an old rag that used to be a tablecloth. You choose your first window carefully, ideally one that faces the street, because you know that's where the real judgment comes from. You give it a quick spritz, marvel at how the dirt magically repels water, and start scrubbing. The grime clings stubbornly, as if it too has paid the mortgage this month. The inside glass is a catalogue of family history. Here, a greasy fingerprint shaped like a dinosaur, no one will ever confess to it. There, a nose print, evidence of the dog's tireless squirrel watch. At the bottom, a constellation of mysterious smudges left by tiny jam-slicked hands. You wipe, polish, and rotate to catch the light, only to find that your vigorous cleaning has replaced old smears with bold new streaks. You switch rags, adjust your angle, and mutter the traditional incantation of your people. Why won't these just go away? You soldier on, moving from window to window, soon discovering that each one holds its own unique horrors. The kitchen window is flecked with a year's worth of splattered dishwater. The bathroom pane is somehow foggy on the outside, and the picture window in the living room, well, that one is visible to Mrs. Harris across the street, which means you tackle it with the kind of determination normally reserved for peace negotiations. Outside, the job gets even more complicated. The garden hose is involved, usually with the enthusiastic assistance of at least one child and the family dog. The ladder, ancient and wobbly, seems designed specifically to test your insurance policy. You balance a bucket, your dignity, and your fear of heights, all while reaching for that one stubborn spot that refuses to budge. There is always a spider lurking in the corner, guarding her territory and daring you to continue. You reach a truce, she keeps the bugs, you get the bottom half. Sometimes you're rewarded with the brief, glorious satisfaction of a window that actually sparkles. Light pours through, illuminating the dust motes in the air and briefly making your living room look like the cover of a home magazine. You catch your own reflection, frazzled hair and all, and wonder if the neighbours can see you in your laundry day outfit. You remember, too late, that you never washed the outside of the window. You make a note for next week and move on. No sooner have you finished than the universe intervenes. A rainstorm blows in, spattering your work with muddy droplets. The kids come home, pressing their faces to the glass in a contest to see who can make the biggest smudge. The dog resumes his vigil, nose to the window, already plotting the next streak. Still, for a brief moment, you stand victorious. Your windows gleam, the world outside looks sharper, and you're quietly certain that Mrs. Harris is peering through her own not-quite-so-clean glass, wondering how you manage it all. And if tomorrow the fingerprints return and the dog wins his nose-printing championship, you'll be ready, with your vinegar, your rags, and the quiet, stubborn pride of someone who knows that in the transparent nightmare of window washing, every fleeting victory counts. No DoorDash, no microwave, just a lot of chopping, simmering and muttering as you create lunch for whoever happens to wander through. bonus points if you can make leftovers look intentional. In 1950's Suburbia, the midday meal isn't so much planned as it is survived. The clock strikes noon, and like magic, or perhaps a well-timed threat, the household begins to reappear. Children home from school for a hot lunch, your spouse just checking in, and neighbours who happen to be in the area with suspiciously empty hands and hopeful eyes. You stand at the centre of the kitchen, part line cook, part magician, part crisis negotiator, wondering how to stretch last night's roast, 3 potatoes, and a dubious carrot into something resembling nourishment. There is no scrolling a delivery app or nuking a frozen entree. The only instant thing in your kitchen is the way the bread disappears the moment you turn your back. You open the refrigerator, an icebox that hums with the energy of barely repressed secrets, and stare into the void seeking inspiration. Inside, you find the remains of yesterday's casserole, a questionable heel of cheese, and a jar of pickles with an expiration date lost to history. You do what generations of home cooks have done before. You improvise. First, you check the bread box. It's filled with slices in various stages of staleness, which you declare perfect for toast and no one is allowed to argue. Leftover meat is sliced thin, bread is buttered, and sandwiches are born. Potatoes are peeled and tossed into a pot, the peels mysteriously multiplying every time you look away. You chop onions, wipe your eyes, and wonder if you should have just served them as French cuisine, which in your house means anything with parsley on top. The kitchen fills with the scent of frying, the hiss of butter, and the low, constant murmur of your internal monologue. Just don't burn it. Just don't burn it. You shuffle pans with one hand and ward off snack-hunting children with the other, deploying carrot sticks as decoys while you try to make the meal stretch far enough for second helpings. The family dog lurks hopefully by your feet, convinced that something, anything, will fall. Sometimes there are leftovers. In the 1950s, leftovers are a challenge to your creativity and your pride. With a little ingenuity, last night's sad vegetables become today's hash, a word that covers a multitude of sins. Cold meat is diced, gravy is revived with a splash of milk and a prayer, and the result is served with a flourish, and a suggestion to add ketchup if you want to feel fancy. The trick is to serve it all with such confidence that no one dares question whether it was ever intended to be anything else. Lunch is less a meal and more a pop quiz. Kids stagger in, hungry and opinionated, surveying the spread with the sceptical gaze of a restaurant critic. Is this meatloaf? One asks, and you nod, because it is. In spirit, if not in form. Your spouse grabs a plate, adds a generous helping of everything, and compliments you with a taste just like Mum used to make, which you decide not to take personally. There are requests for seconds, then cries of outrage when the bread runs out. You placate the masses with an emergency batch of biscuits, ready in a record 12 minutes, thank you baking powder, and pour milk with the solemnity of a bartender on last call. When the meal is finally over, you survey the aftermath. Empty plates, full bellies, crumbs in every conceivable place. You wrap up what's left for tomorrow's culinary adventure, already plotting new disguises for the remaining potato and the lone carrot. And as the kitchen quiets, you allow yourself a quiet victory. The midday meal is conquered for now. You put away your tools, wipe your brow, and try not to think about dinner. After all, survival isn't just about nourishment, it's about making do, making up, and occasionally making something edible out of nothing at all. The weekly shop is a test of memory, stamina, and not strangling anyone in the produce aisle. Armed with coupons and hope, you battle long lines, heavy bags, and the moral dilemma of whether spam is technically food. The 1950s supermarket is a labyrinthine wonder, a land of fluorescent lights and endless shelves, part necessity, part social event, and part obstacle course. You enter the store with a list, a clutch of carefully trimmed coupons, and the steely resolve of someone who has seen things. Every item on the list is an objective, every deviation a slippery slope into budgetary chaos. You repeat your mantra: bread, milk, eggs, and, oh, what was the other thing? You will forget at least one essential, and it will haunt you all week. Cart acquired, you navigate the aisles like a general surveying the battlefield. The carts themselves are architectural marvels designed for maximum squeak and minimum maneuverability. Children pile in, hanging off the sides, or vanish altogether only to be found later in the cereal section, mesmerised by a wall of sugar and cartoon mascots. You dodge fellow shoppers in sensible shoes, exchange tight-lipped smiles, and try to avoid that one neighbour who wants to discuss every PTA committee meeting in excruciating detail. Produce is the first challenge. Here, your hopes for a healthy family meal face off against the realities of limp lettuce and suspiciously shiny apples. You weigh tomatoes, judge the firmness of cucumbers, and speculate on the true age of that fresh cauliflower. There's a subtle pressure to appear knowledgeable. Everyone is watching. A single bruised peach could topple your entire social standing. Next, you approach the heart of temptation, the snack aisle. You pass towers of crackers, oceans of Jell-O, and enough canned pineapple to restock a tropical resort. Children appear at your side, suddenly united in their love of sugar cereals and neon orange cheese dust. You invoke the ancient parental warning: put it back or you'll be eating liver for a week. They know you're bluffing, but respect the tradition. Meat and dairy bring their own drama. The butcher knows everyone by name and is quick to recommend cuts that require advanced degrees in slow cooking. You try to decipher which cuts are economical and which are mysteriously expensive for no apparent reason. At the dairy case, you do quick math. How many gallons of milk does it take to keep the peace? And is there enough left in the budget for ice cream? You grab a carton of eggs, inspect for cracks, and wince at the memory of last week's scramble disaster. Then comes the shelf-stable aisle, a sea of canned goods and instant coffee. Here, you pause at the spam display, pondering its existential status. Is it meat? Is it a dare? Should you buy it just in case there's another blizzard, or will it remain in the pantry, radiating silent judgment for months? You opt for a can just to be safe. One day, it may save a dinner, or at least provide a story for the ages. Checkout is the final gauntlet. You stand in line, shifting the weight of your purse from arm to arm, rehearsing polite responses to the checker's small talk. You lay out your coupons like a gambler laying down a winning hand, silently praying the sale price rings up correctly. Bags accumulate at your feet, paper, double-bagged for the truly heavy loads, and you plot the most efficient way to carry them all to the car in one trip, because 2 trips is defeat. Outside, you heave groceries into the trunk, sweat on your brow, pride in your heart. The battle is over. You survived the weekly shop with your sanity mostly intact, your budget only slightly bruised, and your sense of humour, if a bit frayed, still holding strong. You drive home, promising yourself that next week you'll remember everything on the list. You'll be calm in the cookie aisle, and you won't buy another can of Spam. But you know the truth. The Grocery Gauntlet waits for no one, and history will repeat itself, as surely as the coupons keep coming. Buttons fall off, hems unravel, and your sewing kit is a battlefield. With nimble fingers and blurry vision, you attempt to stitch your family's dignity and their underwear back together. In the 1950s, sewing isn't a hobby. It's emergency medicine. Every family has a mending basket, an overflowing graveyard of shirts missing cuffs, skirts with strategic safety pins, and socks that have seen more darning than daylight. Yours is stashed in the corner, a silent reminder that just 5 more minutes on the radio is always followed by an hour spent wrangling thread that tangles like spaghetti and needles, with eyes the size of a gnat's eyelash. You set up your operating theatre at the kitchen table. The patient, a shirt that has survived 3 children, 2 school years, and at least 1 incident involving tree sap. You spread out your tools, scissors, needles, a pincushion bristling with enough metal to defend the entire neighbourhood. The sewing kit is an archaeological dig of past projects. Mystery buttons, scraps of floral fabric, that one spool of thread you keep just in case you ever own something lime green. First, you tackle buttons. They pop off with the precision timing of a circus act, always during Sunday best or a spelling bee. You retrieve the runaway, if you're lucky, or more likely hunt through the kit for a close match, a shade off, a little too large, but a button is a button in the heat of battle. Threading the needle is a feat requiring the patience of a saint and the eyesight of an eagle. You squint, you curse softly, and eventually get the thread through on sheer force of will and desperate prayer. Stitching is a delicate dance, not too loose, unless you want a repeat performance next week, not too tight, unless permanent wrinkle is the look you're going for. Your hands move with a practiced rhythm, the fabric puckering just enough to announce this is homemade, crafted with care, if not always precision. You tie off the final knot and admire your work. The button is secure even if the thread colour doesn't match. Call it bohemian and move on. Next come the hems, skirts that drag, pants that threaten to trip their wearers, sleeves that have grown longer through some mysterious household curse. Out comes the measuring tape, and you recall geometry class with more anxiety than you'd like to admit. You fold, pin, and press, doing mental arithmetic as you work, praying the finished result lands somewhere near even. Occasionally, you end up with a skirt that's fashionably asymmetrical, which you assure your daughter is all the rage in Paris. Patching is its own special art. The knees of trousers and the elbows of sweaters are never safe in your house. You sift through fabric scraps, seeking a match that is at least less garish than the last. Sometimes the best you can do is polka dots on plaid, a style only a mother's love and a child's complete lack of fashion sense can justify. You iron, you stitch, and you invent stories about the origins of every odd patch, pirate scars, explorer badges, proof of a life well lived. Some repairs, you realise, are more philosophical than practical. The holy sock that returns week after week isn't so much a garment as it is a challenge. You darn, you reinforce, and still the toe appears by Thursday. But giving up would mean surrendering to the forces of chaos, and in the 1950s that is simply not an option. When you're done, the mending basket is lighter, your fingers ache, and the family parade back in, blissfully unaware of the domestic surgery you've performed. The seams hold, at least for now. You gather your tools, sweep up the scraps, and wonder if, somewhere out there, there's a badge for courage in the face of relentless wear and tear. You deserve it. After all, in the story of your home, every crooked stitch is proof that you never give up, no matter how many buttons come undone. You juggle calls from neighbours, PTA volunteers, and your mother-in-law, each demanding time, gossip, or both. Call waiting doesn't exist, but passive-aggressive politeness does. Welcome to the social tightrope act of the 1950s, where the phone is both lifeline and landmine. It's bolted to the kitchen wall, a rotary relic with a cord long enough to lasso a small child, and just short enough to guarantee you'll have an audience for every personal conversation. There are no caller IDs, no missed calls, no do not disturb settings, just the constant shrill ring that signals a fresh round of social acrobatics. It usually starts just as you've sunk your hands into soapy dishwater or sat down with a cooling cup of coffee. The phone shrieks. You dash over, apron flapping, and answer with your brightest hello. It's Mrs. Ellington from down the street, with urgent updates on the neighbourhood grapevine, Mrs. Patterson's hedge, Mr. Rogers' new Buick, and what the butcher's boy really did behind the meat counter. You, mm-hmm, and, oh, really? Your way through the conversation, expertly tossing in a how nice at the right intervals while scanning the stovetop to make sure nothing's burning. No sooner do you hang up than the phone rings again. This time it's the PTA president, equal parts cheerleader and drill sergeant, requesting volunteers for the upcoming bake sale, car wash, or spontaneous library reorganisation. You try to sound enthusiastic while mentally cataloguing your available casseroles and clean tablecloths. Of course, I'd love to help, you say, already plotting the logistics of stretching a batch of brownies to feed 35. Then comes the mother-in-law, who has a sixth sense for inconvenient timing and a knack for mixing helpful advice with pointed criticism. Have you tried my laundry method? It's foolproof. Did you see that new skirt on sale? It might flatter your shape. Every call is a masterclass in staying calm, smiling through the phone and delivering the universal, "Oh, I'll have to try that," with just enough sincerity to keep the peace. Passive-aggressive politeness is the true mother tongue of the decade. The phone becomes a revolving door for social obligation. Birthday invitations to RSVP, rides to coordinate, and the occasional request to just check in on a neighbour's cat while they're away. If you're lucky, you get a call from a friend, someone who understands the importance of a good vent, who can listen to your tales of laundry disasters and cake catastrophes and offer the holy grail of 1950s housewifery, genuine sympathy and a recipe for pineapple upside-down cake. Meanwhile, your family observes these calls with varying degrees of interest. The children whisper and giggle, miming dramatic gestures, while your spouse, immune to social pressure, wonders aloud how many minutes you've spent on that thing this week. They don't know that every minute on the line is a delicate balancing act, not too distant, not too clingy, never so honest that it gets you uninvited to the next bridge night. There's no call waiting, so every conversation is a gamble. If the line is busy, callers are met with the harsh finality of a busy signal and the hope you'll call them back. If you miss a call, expect a knock on the door within the hour, followed by a gentle inquisition. Were you out? I just tried to reach you. By the end of the day, your ear is red, your patience thin, and your list of obligations longer than ever. But you've done it. You've navigated the phone call parade, never dropping the baton, always ready with a polite answer, and still managing to keep your sanity and most of your secrets intact. As you hang up the receiver for the last time and finally reclaim a few moments of peace, you remind yourself, in the 1950s, managing social obligations is less about answering calls and more about dancing gracefully between connection and self-preservation. Tomorrow the phone will ring again and you'll be ready, armed with smiles, a little gossip, and a very long cord. It's crafts, board games, and the occasional go play outside and try not to break a limb. You're the director, referee, and clean-up crew for every production, with no commercial breaks. Welcome to 1950s Childcare, where the concept of screen time is less a debate and more a science fiction fantasy. The television is sacred, a glowing altar reserved for Sunday evenings or, if you're truly desperate, the last half hour before bedtime. For the rest of the day, you're the entire entertainment industry, host, game designer, lead actor, and the underappreciated janitor cleaning up glue spills and the occasional indoor tornado. The day begins with crafts, which in theory is about fostering creativity, but in practice is mostly about how many ways a child can glue their fingers together. You lay out the supplies, construction paper in colours never found in nature, a pot of paste that smells faintly of flour and hope, and an assortment of pipe cleaners that will, without fail, end up twisted around the dog's tail. Someone wants to make a puppet, someone else a spaceship, and you're tasked with engineering both out of egg cartons and buttons. You tape, you cut, and you nod along as your youngest explains why their blob of yarn is in fact a horse. Next up are board games, A wholesome activity, if by wholesome you mean a surefire way to spark sibling warfare. You referee games of Monopoly that threaten to last until the Eisenhower administration ends, and mediate bitter disputes over who gets to be the thimble. Candyland, with its cheerful colours and simple rules, somehow devolves into an existential debate about fairness. You enforce the laws of the land, no flipping the board, no eating the pieces, and try not to laugh when the dog makes off with the spinner. When the inside options are exhausted and your patience with them, you declare the magic words, "Go play outside." This is not a suggestion, it's a survival strategy. Outside, the possibilities are endless, and the risks only moderately concerning. The kids race to the backyard, already plotting their next adventure, building forts from laundry baskets, digging to china with the garden spade, and inventing games that require 3 sticks, a pine cone, and a surprising disregard for safety. Your only real rule is try not to bleed on anything you can't wash. The neighbourhood is alive with children, each household releasing its pack at roughly the same time, like a suburban migration. The shouts and laughter drift in through open windows, occasionally punctuated by the shrill cry of "Mom!" You monitor from a safe distance, scanning for signs of trouble. Suspicious silence, never a good sign. Loud accusations of cheating, or the dreaded chorus of "I'm telling." If the kids come back muddy, tired, and only a little bit scraped, you count it as a win. Rainy days are their own challenge. Denied the freedom of the great outdoors, the herd turns its energy inward, staging living room plays and launching living room pillow fortresses. You sit in the audience, applauding every interpretive dance and talent show magic trick, wondering if it's too early for a second pot of coffee. You try to remember, is the glitter non-toxic? Did anyone see where the scissors went? Throughout it all, you wear 1,000 hats: storyteller, first aid provider, snack dispenser, an occasional judge for who can jump the farthest off the porch step. There's no pause button, no commercial break, no cartoon babysitter to offer you 10 minutes of peace. Just you and your improvisational skills, crafting childhood memories out of cardboard tubes and sidewalk chalk. And at the end of the day, when the crafts are drying, the game pieces have mostly been accounted for and the backyard is blessedly quiet, you survey the scene with tired pride. The house may be messier, but the children are happy, a little wild and miraculously entertained. You've pulled off another day of the greatest show on earth, with nothing but imagination, ingenuity, and the enduring hope that tomorrow someone will invent Saturday morning cartoons. Anyone can drop by at any time, so you perfect the art of panic cleaning and applying lipstick in 3 seconds flat. Your reputation rides on whether your living room smells more like cookies than feet. Welcome to the era of unlocked doors and unannounced guests, where just in the neighbourhood is both a social custom and a constant threat. In 1950's Suburbia, the pop-in is the ultimate test of a housewife's skill, reflexes, and ability to hide laundry baskets under the sofa in record time. Somewhere, there's a magazine article about always being guest ready, but you suspect those women didn't have 3 children, a muddy dog, and a spouse who considers putting away to mean relocating the mess to a different room. The warning is rarely more than a quick knock, or if you're lucky, the clatter of the mailbox lid. Sometimes you spot Mrs. Harris's hat bobbing down the driveway and have just enough time to issue a red alert. Suddenly, the house transforms into a military operation. Dirty socks are launched behind curtains, yesterday's mail is stuffed into drawers, and the ancient vacuum is yanked out for a wild victory lap. The dog is bribed with a biscuit and a stern talking to about not leaping on company. You become a blur of activity. Magazines are fanned out artfully, the best tea towels are hastily draped over stains, and you do a triage on the sofa cushions, fluffing, flipping, and praying that no one sits on the sticky spot. There's a strategic lighting plan, lamps on, overheads off, all in the hope that gentle shadows will hide a multitude of domestic sins. Your nose is acutely tuned. If the scent of lemon cleaner or fresh cookies is absent, you're one step away from defeat. If all else fails, you light a candle and hope for the best. As you dash to the bathroom for a 3-second lipstick application and the world's fastest face wash, you recite your emergency guest mantra, smile, apologize for the mess, and offer them something to eat. Because hospitality, in 1950s Suburbia, is judged not just by your dusting skills, but by your ability to produce snacks at a moment's notice. Store-bought is shameful, homemade is gold. You perfect the art of emergency cookies, a tin of last week's shortbread, reheated just enough to pass for fresh, served with a flourish and a story about trying a new recipe. Your guests arrive, stepping over the imaginary threshold that divides normal chaos from the performance of perfection. They remark on your lovely curtains, the cheerful atmosphere, and if you're lucky, the subtle aroma of baked goods instead of wet sneakers. There's an unspoken contest in every conversation. Who will admit to the greater housekeeping failure? You smile knowingly as Mrs. Johnson laments her dust bunnies and Mrs. Harris confesses her child's love of peanut butter sculptures. The real truth is, you're all running the same race, measuring success in how long you can keep the dog from eating the snacks. The children are paraded through the living room, scrubbed, mostly, hair tamed, briefly, instructed to smile and respond politely. Your spouse may or may not make an appearance, depending on whether the lawnmower is more appealing than small talk. You nod at compliments, trade recipes, and keep a weather eye on the clock, calculating how long you can maintain the charade before someone discovers the pile of shoes behind the drapes. After the guests leave, you breathe a sigh of relief, restoring the house to its natural state. Comfortable, chaotic, a little sticky, but undeniably yours. The dog's released from exile, the kids return to disarray, and you promise yourself to be more prepared next time, knowing full well you'll repeat the performance whenever the next pop-in strikes. In the end, keeping up appearances isn't about having a perfect home. It's about maintaining the illusion for just long enough to pass the social inspection, to share a cookie, a laugh, and maybe even a moment of honest camaraderie. Because beneath the rush and the nerves, everyone is just hoping their living room smells more like cookies than feet. And tonight, at least for a few minutes, yours does. Weeds invade like Viking raiders. Roses have opinions and your knees are permanently grass-stained. You water, prune, and try to look serene for the neighbours, even as you wage war on aphids. Welcome to the front lines of 1950s Suburbia, where every home's pride is rooted in the backyard and the garden is less outdoor sanctuary and more endless campaign of attrition. In glossy magazines, gardens are oases of calm, pristine flower beds, neat hedges, and vegetables so perfect they might have been imported from Eden. Out here in the real world, your patch of earth is a mixed bag of valiant tulips, stubborn dandelions, and that one mystery plant you're afraid to pull up, just in case it turns out to be a prize-winning lily or the start of another family legend. Every morning you step outside with the air of a general reviewing troops. The sun is bright, birds are singing, and your first sight is usually a dandelion waving mockingly at you from the middle of the lawn. You arm yourself with a rusty trowel, garden gloves that have seen better days, and an optimism forged in last season's failures. The roses are waiting, somehow both delicate and demanding, with thorns that remember every slight. You prune with surgical precision, pausing only to negotiate with a particularly dramatic bush that's threatening to wilt if you even look at it the wrong way. The battle against weeds is never ending. Crabgrass creeps across the lawn like it owns the place, and morning glories pop up in places you didn't even plant them. Your weeding posture would make a chiropractor cringe. Half crouch, half face plant, all determination. You try every trick. Boiling water, secret homemade sprays, whispered threats. and, when all else fails, outright begging. The weeds remain unmoved. Somewhere in the back of your mind, you wonder if you're actually cultivating the next generation of superplants. Next, you turn to watering, a daily ritual that requires the delicate timing of a military maneuver. Too little, and the tomatoes stage a protest. Too much, and the slugs celebrate with a parade. The hose is your trusted lieutenant, snaking behind you and occasionally lashing out at your ankles in rebellion. You sprinkle, spray, and try to avoid dousing your shoes. Again. All under the watchful eye of Mrs. Green across the fence, whose petunias are somehow always just a little more perky than yours. Pruning is an act of hope and terror. You snip here and there, gently encouraging growth while silently apologising to the hydrangeas for last year's incident. The compost heap grows ever taller, a fragrant reminder of garden casualties and grand ambitions. And then, just as you're feeling victorious, the true enemy emerges. Aphids. They descend in armies, sucking the life from your roses and reducing you to a muttering, spray-wielding vigilante. Ladybugs are conscripted into service. Eggshells are scattered as makeshift barriers, and you patrol your beds at dusk like a sentry on high alert. Through it all, you strive for composure. You greet the neighbours with a breezy wave, feign calm as you wrestle with the hedge clippers, and try not to swear at the sight of a molehill in your freshly planted marigolds. Garden magazines promise serenity, but real peace is found in the quiet satisfaction of dirt under your nails, sweat on your brow, and the sweet sight of one perfect bloom after a week of chaos. By evening, you retreat indoors, grass stains like badges of honour, arms scratched, heart full. You glance out the window, surveying your domain, a little wild, a little lopsided, but entirely yours. Tomorrow the weeds will return, the roses will make fresh demands, and you'll be back on your knees, waging suburban war with muddy determination. And as you close the curtains, you remind yourself, gardens are never really finished. They're living proof that beauty is stubborn, chaos is inevitable, and some battles, especially the ones with aphids, are worth fighting every single day. It's not just a meal, it's a competitive sport. Menus are planned, silver-polished, and you sweat over gelatin salads that jiggle with judgment. Social disaster is always one burned casserole away. In 1950's Suburbia, a dinner party isn't so much a gathering as it is a test of nerves, endurance, and stagecraft. Invitations go out with the careful precision of a United Nations peace summit, and the guest list is a complex social equation, balancing neighbours, co-workers, and at least one person you secretly hope will cancel. Your dining room is transformed into an arena, the table a battlefield where etiquette, culinary ambition, and the laws of physics will soon clash. It begins days in advance. The house undergoes an emergency deep clean, windows wiped until the glass disappears, carpets beaten with enough force to qualify as light cardio, and the good tablecloth extracted from its sacred storage, pressed and placed with the reverence of a holy relic. The silver is polished until you can see your own anxious reflection, hairnet and all. Each napkin is folded, each place setting arranged with military precision. The centerpiece, flowers, if you're lucky, or plastic fruit if you're realistic, stands sentinel, a cheerful distraction from any culinary missteps yet to come. Menu planning is an art form bordering on espionage. You consult cookbooks, gossip magazines, and your mother's handwritten notes, searching for that one recipe guaranteed to impress. There must be a roast, of course, and a casserole, preferably one that can be assembled the night before and baked into submission. Potatoes, 2 vegetables, and bread round out the offerings. And then, the pièce de résistance, a moulded gelatin salad, layers of technicolor ingredients suspended in wobbly glory, judged by the quiver of its edges and the bravery of your guests. The day of the party arrives, and the kitchen becomes a war zone. Pots boil, timers ding, and you perform a delicate juggling act, rotating dishes in and out of the oven, checking temperatures, and praying the roast cooks through without turning into shoe leather. There's a moment of crisis when the aspic refuses to set, and you briefly consider serving it as avant-garde soup. You sweat through your best dress, hair held together with a combination of prayer and hairspray, and issue dire warnings to the family. No one touches the pie. No one mentions last year's gravy incident. As guests arrive, the performance begins. You greet them with a smile that only occasionally slips, ushering them into a living room that smells faintly of Lysol and nerves. Cocktails are served. Carefully, no one wants a repeat of the Great Spill of 52, and small talk floats through the air, equal parts compliment and covert reconnaissance. The neighbours compare gardens, the men gather around the radio, and someone inevitably asks if the recipe is family tradition or experimental. You laugh, and pretend you haven't spent all week fretting over every menu choice. Dinner itself is a theatrical production. Platters are paraded from kitchen to table. Conversation flows with the clink of silverware, and everyone is on their best behaviour, at least until the third glass of wine. The gelatin salad wobbles with an air of smug superiority, daring anyone to actually take a bite. You hold your breath with every serving, watching for grimaces or, worse, polite silence. Disaster looms at every corner. Will the roast be dry? Is the bread burnt? Will someone discover the emergency canned ham waiting in the wings? And yet, by the end of the evening, the plates are empty. The guests are laughing, and no one has been poisoned or stormed out in a fit of culinary outrage. You've survived. You've conquered. The table may be a mess, but the evening is a success. As the last guest leaves, you kick off your shoes, collapse into a chair, and savour the greatest victory of all. You live to hostess another day. Even if the gelatin salad is still jiggling, alone and untouched in the fridge, you freshen your hair, spritz perfume, and practice your everything's fine smile before your husband returns. Dinner is on the table, children look presentable-ish, and you pretend exhaustion is just really deep contentment. This is the 1950s housewife's Twilight Performance, the final act of a day spent juggling chores, children, and the stubborn stains of domesticity. Somewhere between the fourth load of laundry and the 50-second request for a snack, you glance at the clock and realise that showtime is nearly upon you. There's a ritual to this transformation, a dash of powder, a quick pat to flatten any rebellious curls, and a spritz of perfume that's equal parts floral bouquet and desperate optimism. The house itself is in on the act. The living room has been triaged, stray toys whisked into baskets, couch cushions plumped to hide suspicious stains, and at least one lamp angled just so to cast a flattering light over the scene. In the kitchen, the aroma of dinner is both invitation and proof of effort. Roast chicken if you're feeling ambitious, tuna casserole if you're not, and breakfast for dinner if the day's chaos has fully defeated you. The table is set with the nice plates, because nothing says effort like the threat of extra dishwashing. Children are herded into the bathroom, scrubbed with the gentle urgency of a fire drill. Faces are checked for remnants of lunch, hair slicked down with water, and outfits, ideally free from grass stains and peanut butter, are straightened. There's a flurry of last-minute negotiations. Please, just for one night, don't wrestle your brother under the table. The kids emerge, tidy-ish, fidgeting and ready to test the limits of both patience and starch. You run through your checklist: hair, fluffed, lipstick, applied, smile, fixed and bright. By the time your husband's car rumbles into the driveway, you've arranged yourself by the door, a picture of composed tranquility. You greet him with a kiss, hoping he doesn't notice the faint aroma of ammonia still clinging to your sleeves. He asks, "How was your day?" And you reply, "Oh, nothing much," as if your day hasn't been a marathon in sensible shoes. Dinner unfolds with the practiced choreography of a Broadway show. Your spouse asks about the kids' days, nods approvingly at the meal and compliments the potatoes. You accept the praise with a gracious smile, resisting the urge to mention that the potatoes are actually leftovers in disguise, and that the secret ingredient is sheer willpower. Conversation is steered gently around the rocks of report cards and broken appliances, focusing instead on safe waters, upcoming PTA meetings, the neighbour's new fence, and whether the dog can in fact climb trees. There's an art to making it all look easy. You ask questions, laugh at jokes, and refill glasses with a poise that could earn you a medal for multitasking. In these moments, you let yourself imagine that the effort is invisible, that your spouse truly believes in the myth of domestic serenity. The real triumph, however, isn't in maintaining the illusion, but in knowing the chaos behind it. The sock retrieved from the roast pan moments before serving, the emergency patch sewn into your son's trousers at lightning speed, the kitchen towel hiding a chipped plate. As the evening winds down, you clear the table with a flourish, already plotting a small escape. 10 minutes with a novel, a cup of tea, maybe even a moment of silence. The children scatter, your spouse disappears behind the evening paper, and you finally relax, the mask slipping just enough for a quiet sigh of relief. Deep down you know the truth. The performance is less about deception and more about love. You show up every day, tired but determined, not because it's easy, but because it matters to you, to your family, and to the tiny piece of yourself that still dreams of slippers and a foot massage. Looking effortless is an art, but surviving the day with your sanity mostly intact, that's pure stubborn genius. Someone is always sniffling, coughing, or generating mysterious rashes. You become a one-woman field hospital with nothing but Vicks Vapor Rub, saltine crackers, and a suspicious bottle of tonic. Welcome to the world of 1950s home healthcare, where the best medicine is a combination of blind hope, creative improvisation, and a level of patience that would put the saints to shame. There's no Dayquil, no quick trips to urgent care, and certainly no pediatric nurse hotline. Instead, your living room transforms into an infirmary at the first hint of a sneeze, and your bedside manner is somewhere between a drill sergeant and Florence Nightingale, if Florence Nightingale was armed only with menthol rub and the eternal threat of cod liver oil. It always starts small, a little cough, a mild sniffle, a child whose forehead is hot enough to fry an egg. Not that you'd ever try, but it's tempting on a cold morning. You diagnose with the back of your hand and the certainty of someone who's been through this rodeo 100 times. You're a little warm, but nothing a nap and some ginger ale can't fix. Ginger ale is prescribed for everything from fevers to heartbreak, and if you're out, flat 7-Up will do. For a truly serious case, you reach for the Vicks, generously slathered on chests, under noses, and according to some grandmothers, rubbed on the soles of feet for mysterious draw-out-the-illness powers. Sick days are a blur of thermometers, the glass kind, clutched between teeth with a level of danger modern parents can only dream of. Chicken broth simmering on the stove, and saltine crackers served on a TV tray. You fluff pillows, cool fevered brows, and recite the sacred mantra, "No school today, but you'll have to do your homework tomorrow." The patient is installed on the couch, draped in blankets, surrounded by an arsenal of tissues and whatever stuffed animals are deemed medically necessary. You field endless questions. Can I have more Jell-O? Will I ever feel better? What's in this tonic anyway? That last one you answer with a non-committal hum, because the truth is no one knows. The tonic was purchased at the pharmacy, its label boasting of ancient roots, magical berries, and the power to cure anything short of a broken arm. It tastes somewhere between licorice and regret, and its primary effect seems to be inspiring the patient to feign sleep so they aren't forced to finish it. Meanwhile, you run triage. The other children, sensing weakness, either invent their own symptoms to join the sick bed or make a break for the cookies while you're distracted. The spouse comes home and offers helpful advice. Are you sure it's not mumps? It's not. Did you check for spots? You did, twice. If the case is dire, you consult the Holy Book of Motherly Wisdom, a well-thumbed pamphlet from the local clinic, tucked in the drawer with spare bobby pins and the number for Dr. Fitzpatrick, who will either reassure you or suggest waiting it out. As evening falls, you orchestrate the ritual bath lukewarm, with baking soda or oatmeal if rashes are involved, and followed by a fresh set of pyjamas and another round of Vicks. You read a chapter of something soothing, fluff the pillows once more and dim the lights. The patient, finally drowsy, drifts off to sleep surrounded by the comforting scent of menthol and home. In the quiet that follows, you wipe down the doorknobs, reboil the thermometer, and mentally brace yourself for round 2, because germs, like house guests, never come just once. You may not have Dayquil, but you have resolve, a jar of Vicks, and enough crackers to weather any storm. And as you finally sit, exhausted, with your own cup of ginger ale in hand, you realise you've once again survived the sick day siege, armed with nothing but resourcefulness, stubbornness, and the world's stickiest vapour rub. The holidays are a marathon of baking, decorating, and fighting with tangled strings of lights. You host, toast, and roast, all while maintaining the illusion that this is your favourite time of year. Welcome to the grand festival of seasonal expectations, where the air smells faintly of cinnamon, pine needles, and barely suppressed panic. In the glossy magazine spreads, holiday magic arrives in a perfectly wrapped box, every bow tied just so, every stocking hung with symmetrical precision. In reality, your box of decorations is an archaeological dig, a tangle of memories, one-eyed reindeer ornaments, and the stubborn scent of mothballs. It all starts with the decorations. You haul down the boxes from the attic, or if you're lucky the hall closet, and brace yourself for a 3-hour wrestling match with garland, wreaths, and the ghost of last year's glitter. The children appear, faces aglow with a kind of excitement reserved for unwrapping presents or discovering there's leftover pie for breakfast. They help by pulling out every breakable ornament and rearranging your careful aesthetic so it now features a clump of tinsel on a single, overburdened branch. The lights are next, a string that was working just fine in January, now dark as a Dickensian alley. You plug, unplug, and plug again, muttering incantations only slightly more desperate than the ones used by professional electricians. Eventually you give up and declare, that side of the tree is the mysterious, magical side. Baking begins in earnest. The kitchen transforms into a flower-dusted battlefield, every surface occupied by a parade of cookies, pies, and whatever traditional treat your in-laws remember from their childhood. The mixer roars, the oven belches out sweet-smelling clouds, and your apron acquires a permanent dusting of powdered sugar. There is no such thing as too many cookies, at least until you realise you've baked enough for a medium-sized wedding. You wrap them in cellophane, label tins with festive stickers, and begin the annual campaign of delivering plates to every neighbour, whether they want them or not. As the big day approaches, so do the guests. Hosting means deep cleaning the house while pretending you don't notice the dog's new favourite spot behind the tree. You polish the silverware, iron napkins, and stage the living room to look both lived in and spotless, a delicate balance only achieved by hiding all evidence of real life in the nearest closet. Your spouse is put on light duty, literally, standing outside, shivering, and untangling the last outdoor strand that's been in a knot since Truman left office. Meal planning is an Olympic event. You make lists, revise lists, lose lists, and finally surrender to whatever can be roasted in a single pan. There's a turkey, or a ham, or, if you're really feeling brave, both, plus 3 kinds of potatoes, 4 vegetables, and just-in-case rolls, because running out of bread would be a Yuletide tragedy. You practice your "it's supposed to look like that" speech in front of the mirror, just in case the roast emerges looking like an abstract sculpture. The day itself is a blur of hugs, laughter, and enough wrapping paper to reconstruct the Amazon rainforest. You mediate family games, referee squabbles over the last gingerbread man, and make toasts with a glass of something sparkly, sometimes ginger ale, sometimes the grown-up punch, depending on how badly the pie crust went. Throughout it all, you keep smiling, gracefully deflecting questions about when you're going to finally relax and enjoy yourself. By nightfall, the lights are twinkling, the house smells of pine and pie, and you collapse on the couch surrounded by crumpled bows and happy, exhausted children. The illusion holds. For a fleeting moment, it really is the most wonderful time of the year. You did it. You survived holiday hysteria, decorations, mostly, intact, dignity only slightly frayed. And as you gaze at the still glowing, questionably lit tree, you promise yourself that next year you'll start earlier, or maybe just leave the decorations up until spring. Budgets are balanced with mathematical wizardry, and every nickel is pinched until it squeals. You clip coupons, reuse foil, and debate the ethics of powdered milk. Welcome to the high-wire act of 1950s household finances, a world where thrift isn't just a virtue, it's practically an Olympic sport. There's no such thing as a financial safety net. You make do, make over, and make up new ways to stretch a dollar until it resembles taffy. Each week you sit at the kitchen table armed with a stubby pencil, an envelope of grocery receipts, and the steely determination of someone who has faced down a leaky roof and lived to tell the tale. It begins with a budget. You draw up lists, shuffle bills into neat piles, and calculate everything down to the last cent. The goal: make your spouse's paycheck last until the next one without resorting to beans and rice for every meal. You know precisely how much bread, milk, and coffee the family will need, plus the emergency chocolate fund, a category as sacred as rent and utilities. Every planned expense is weighed with the care of a gemologist examining diamonds. Is this cereal too frivolous? Is this soap really extra gentle, or just extra expensive? Coupons are your secret weapon. You clip, save, and file them like a squirrel preparing for winter. Double coupon days are the Super Bowl of household economics, and you know exactly which stores will honour them. You've mastered the art of stacking discounts and can recite the fine print in your sleep. Your purse rattles with coins, paper scraps, and a well-worn loyalty card. At checkout, you present your coupons with a quiet flourish, watching the total drop and basking in the cashier's grudging respect. Resourcefulness is the name of the game. Foil is washed, smoothed out, and folded for a second or third use. String is saved, rubber bands are hoarded, and empty glass jars are repurposed as everything from flower vases to somewhere to put the bacon grease. Clothing is patched and repatched, hems taken up and let down, and socks are darned until they resemble an abstract art project. Nothing is ever thrown away without a second look, and maybe a third, just in case you missed a potential use. You find yourself in philosophical debates over grocery items. Powdered milk is less a beverage and more a test of moral character. You add it to recipes, slip it into pancakes, and hope no one notices. There's a silent agreement in the house that some things, like real butter, are non-negotiable luxuries, to be treasured and rationed like wartime gold. Generic brands are embraced, store-bought treats become a rare holiday event, and leftovers are reincarnated so many times you start to name them. Entertainment too is budgeted. Movie nights mean popcorn made on the stove, not bought in a bag, and the drive-in experience is recreated by lining up dining room chairs in front of the radio. Birthdays are celebrated with homemade cake, decorated with whatever candies haven't already been pilfered from the secret stash. Gifts are crafted, not purchased, and the wrapping paper is ironed and reused, possibly for the fourth time. Still, there's a strange pride in your thriftiness. Every penny saved is a small victory, every creative solution a badge of honour. You swap tips with neighbours, invent new ways to use stale bread, and write letters on the backs of last year's Christmas cards. The kids grumble, but years later they'll marvel at your ingenuity and pass on your methods, along with that one slightly terrifying meatloaf recipe. At the end of the day, you close your ledger and breathe a sigh of relief. The bills are paid, the pantry is, mostly, full, and you've managed to keep the lights on and spirits high. Financial acrobatics may be a daily balancing act, but in this house, you're the star performer, never falling, always improvising, and making a little go a very, very long way. Once the house is finally quiet, you steal a sliver of peace, maybe with a dog-eared novel, maybe just staring at the ceiling, questioning your life choices. Self-care is a cup of tea and 10 minutes without anyone yelling, "Mom!" The evening collapse is a sacred ritual, performed in the hush that follows a day of relentless motion. The house, that noisy stage of chores, drama, and perpetual snack negotiation, is at last still. The only sounds are the faint hum of the refrigerator, the ticking of the hallway clock, and, if you're lucky, the distant contented sigh of a child finally drifting off to sleep. You move through the rooms in slow motion, almost afraid to disturb the fragile peace you've worked so hard to achieve. First, you perform a reconnaissance mission, a quick check to make sure all small humans are actually asleep, and not, say, building a fort out of clean laundry. You retrieve a stray toy from behind the couch, drape an extra blanket over a sleepy form, and resist the urge to start cleaning. This is your time. The day's work can wait until morning, or at least until you remember the science project due tomorrow. You head to the kitchen, careful not to clatter cups or rattle the kettle too loudly. Tonight's self-care is simple. A cup of tea, brewed strong, sweetened with more sugar than you'd ever admit to a doctor. If there are cookies left from lunch, you claim them without apology. You earned them, each crumb a small reward for surviving spilled milk, missing shoes, and the philosophical debate over whether ketchup belongs on eggs. Your chair, the one spot in the house with your actual imprint, is waiting, surrounded by the remnants of everyone else's day. There's a magazine, last week's crossword puzzle, a forgotten crayon, and a paperback novel you've been reading in 3-minute increments for the past 6 months. You curl up, wrap your hands around your mug, and let the warmth seep into tired muscles. You may not be in a spa, but for a few blessed moments, you can almost pretend. Sometimes, you pick up your book and read the same page 4 times, mind drifting as the words blur. Sometimes, you just sit and listen, feeling the gentle creaks and sighs of a house at rest. You reflect on the day, on its victories, its failures, and its absurdities. You replay the moment you caught your youngest with a frog in her pocket, or the triumphant unveiling of a dinner that no one outright refused to eat. You allow yourself a private laugh, a quiet sigh, and the tiniest bit of pride for making it through, dignity and humour mostly intact. Self-care in the 1950s isn't a bubble bath with rose petals or a treat-yourself shopping spree. It's a few pages of a novel, a dab of cold cream, or simply the right to exist in a room without being asked for something. You savour the silence, knowing it's temporary but no less precious for its brevity. You tell yourself that tomorrow you'll wake refreshed, ready to take on another round of breakfast negotiations and the ever-renewing laundry gauntlet. Eventually your eyes grow heavy and your tea grows cold. You set your mug down and tiptoe to bed, grateful for soft sheets and the knowledge that, for a few hours at least, no one will need you. The house slumbers with you, gathering its strength for tomorrow's parade of chaos and laughter. As you slip beneath the covers, you let go of the day's worries. You did enough. You are enough. And for tonight, that is more than sufficient. You drift off with the quiet certainty that, in this brief oasis of calm, you found a moment entirely your own, a tiny, golden piece of peace in the endless, beautiful storm. Sunday night is a sacred ceremony of prepping, praying, and plotting for the chaos to come. You lay out clothes, plan meals, and wonder, if reincarnation is real, can you come back as a Roomba? It's the quiet before the storm, the calm during which you take inventory of both the pantry and your soul. The family, freshly scrubbed from baths and mostly in pyjamas, moves about the house with a strange blend of lethargy and anticipation. You're the high priestess of routine, orchestrating the rituals that stand between you and total Monday morning disaster. First comes the wardrobe parade. You stand before the open closet, surveying the lineup of freshly laundered shirts and skirts, the school uniforms and church dresses, all pressed within an inch of their lives. You match socks, pair shoes, and perform the weekly ritual of discovering that at least one sleeve is mysteriously missing a button. You set aside a few outfits for emergencies, which, in your house, could mean anything from a spilled glass of milk to an unexpected invitation to the neighbour's garden party. Every ensemble is inspected, approved, and, if necessary, accessorized with a stern warning about grass stains. Meal planning is next. You spread cookbooks across the kitchen table, a battlefield of annotated recipes, coupon clippings, and the lingering crumbs of dessert. You make ambitious plans for Monday, roast chicken with all the trimmings, and by Friday, you know full well you'll be down to breakfast for dinner, and hoping no one asks for seconds. The grocery list grows ever longer. Bread, milk, apples, that one cereal everyone loves but only when it's on sale. You mentally calculate how many bananas are enough, and how many will simply morph into science experiments by Thursday. Lunchboxes are lined up in military formation. You check supplies, making mental notes to find something more inspiring than last week's bologna sandwiches. You wrap leftovers with a sigh of hope and a dash of resignation. Somewhere between slicing carrots and folding napkins, you wonder if the other mums have cracked the code, or if they too are just one skipped grocery trip away from sending their kids to school with a can of beans and a prayer. There are baths to supervise, hair to brush, and the ongoing mystery of locating library books that were present mere hours ago and have now vanished into the ether. You sign permission slips, jot down reminders, and tape a note to the fridge about the school bake sale you have every intention of forgetting. Somewhere in the background, the radio hums a familiar tune, offering the illusion of calm competence. The evening winds down, and the family gathers somewhat around the living room for the last act. A round of TV or a chapter of a well-worn book, read aloud to the tune of muffled yawns and quiet giggles. You try to memorize the shape of the piece, the rare sight of everyone still and content. The house smells faintly of clean laundry, lemon polish, and impending bedtime. With the clock creeping toward Monday, you walk through the house one last time. You check the doors, turn off the lights, and tuck stray toys into baskets. You pause in the hallway, savouring the hush, the neat rows of shoes, the sense, however temporary, that order has been restored. Finally you climb into bed, muscles tired but spirit steady, feeling almost triumphant. The chaos will start anew with the sunrise, but for now, you've done all you can. You say a silent prayer for patience, strong coffee, and maybe, just maybe, an extra hour of sleep. And as you drift off, you smile, thinking that if reincarnation is real, being a Roomba wouldn't be so bad. At least then, all you'd have to do is spin in circles, eat dust, and beep for help when stuck under the couch. But for tonight, you're simply you, master of the Sunday reset, guardian of the coming week, and survivor of the sacred ceremony that keeps it all spinning. Before refrigerators whirred quietly in every kitchen, you relied on the family icebox, a small, sweating mystery chest that doubled as a science experiment. Every morning you pray the block of ice hasn't melted into a lake under your butter, and you learn the subtle art of stacking leftovers like edible Tetris. The scent of sour milk is your ever-present reminder that time is always ticking, and so are the bacteria. Welcome to the age of refrigeration roulette, where every meal is a gamble and the stakes are as high as your tolerance for slightly off potato salad. The icebox sits in the corner of the kitchen, a humble wooden box lined with metal, looking deceptively sturdy until you open the lid and confront the steamy blast of uncertainty. Inside, things are organised by one simple rule. Whatever must not spoil goes on top. Whatever is already past the point of no return is buried underneath, and anything you can't identify is left as a problem for next week's version of you. The day begins with the ceremonial checking of the ice. You lift the lid and inspect the block. Sometimes it's solid and promising, sometimes it's a sad puddle with a floating carrot, and sometimes it's disappeared altogether, leaving your butter looking vaguely traumatized. You quickly wipe the inside before the smell escapes, rearrange the contents, and offer up a little prayer that lunch will be less of a gamble than yesterday's chicken. The ice itself is a whole production. It arrives courtesy of the Iceman, a figure straight out of a bygone era, lugging a dripping block on his shoulder, tongs in hand, and a twinkle of mischief in his eye. He deposits the ice with a warning to keep the lid shut tight and a wink at the children, who promptly request a sliver to suck on before school. You watch as the block settles in, beads of water collecting on its surface, and calculate how long you have until the slow melt begins. Hours if you're lucky, minutes if the day turns humid. Food storage is an act of optimism and creativity. Leftovers are wrapped in wax paper, each bundle a surprise package whose contents may or may not resemble last night's dinner. Eggs get prime real estate, and milk jostles for space alongside jars of pickles and yesterday's dubious casserole. Vegetables attempt to stay crisp, but the icebox's temperamental climate means the lettuce is always one wilt away from compost. You develop a sixth sense for what needs to be eaten first and what can survive one more day of icy limbo. As the day heats up, the icebox starts sweating like a nervous debutante. You mop up the condensation with a rag, already dreading the inevitable moment when someone forgets to shut the lid and the whole thing turns into a puddle of culinary regret. The children, oblivious to the drama, raid the box for cold snacks, leaving the door ajar and your best-laid storage plans in ruins. By afternoon, you find yourself sniffing a jug of milk and weighing the risk versus reward. Just a hint of sourness. But is it enough to flavour the mashed potatoes, or enough to cause a family mutiny? Of course, there's always the weekly clean-out. This is less an act of hygiene and more an excavation. You unearth jars of preserves from last summer, a single shriveled carrot, and something that was once cheese, now auditioning for a role in the next penicillin commercial. Everything is rinsed, wiped, and restacked, and you vow, as always, to stay on top of it this week. But even as you navigate the hazards, there's a certain pride in mastering the icebox. You develop a keen sense of timing, an appreciation for cool butter on warm bread, and a deep respect for the science of survival. By the end of the day, you close the lid, content for now, knowing that in the great game of refrigeration roulette, you've survived another round. And tomorrow, when the ice melts and the milk sours, you'll be ready, armed with a fresh block and the unshakable confidence that comes from outsmarting bacteria, at least until dinner. Forget shopping sprees. Your wardrobe is a patchwork of last year's styles, home-sewn dresses and hand-me-downs from your cousin in Des Moines. You're a magician with a needle and thread, conjuring new outfits out of old tablecloths, and nothing brings a family together like arguing about who wore it better in 1947. Welcome to the Frugal Fashion runway of 1950s Suburbia, where new clothes are less a trip to the department store and more a test of ingenuity and negotiation skills. The sewing basket is your best friend and your battleground, crammed with scraps of fabric, spools of thread, and the ever-present threat of finding a stray pin with your bare foot. In this house, style isn't bought. It's carefully stitched, endlessly patched, and sometimes, if you squint, almost indistinguishable from the latest Sears catalogue. Every season begins with the great sort. Out come the boxes from under beds and high closet shelves crammed with an assortment of hopeful garments. You lay everything out, squint at labels, and try to remember who wore what, when, and how it shrank that way. There are always surprises. A dress you forgot existed, a sweater that's grown suspiciously shorter, and trousers whose knees have developed personality. You sigh, take up your tape measure, and start matching children to clothing like an assembly line operator with a sense of humour. Hand-me-downs are family heirlooms with stories attached. This was Uncle Larry's lucky shirt, or Aunt June wore this to the harvest dance back when hems were respectable. There's a running tally of who wore what best, who spilled grape juice in 1947, and which child managed to keep a sweater pristine for more than a week. Every fitting session turns into a fashion show/comedy routine, with children twirling in outfits a little roomy here, a bit short there, and everyone negotiating the coveted good sweater, like a scene from a particularly well-dressed courtroom drama. Your own wardrobe is a living experiment in thrift and resourcefulness. Old skirts become aprons, worn shirts transform into play blouses, and tablecloths with an unfortunate stain in one corner get a second life as Sunday dresses. You consult dog-eared pattern books, sometimes following instructions, sometimes just trusting your instincts and hoping for the best. If the hem's a bit crooked, well, call it Parisian flair and move on. Every alteration is an act of hope and stubbornness. You hem and take in, let out and patch, the kitchen table transforming nightly into a sewing studio. The rhythmic hum of the machine is the soundtrack to countless evenings, broken only by the occasional exclamation as a needle snaps or a bobbin runs out just before the last seam. Buttons are reattached, zippers replaced, and linings mended. With each repair a small rebellion against planned obsolescence. When things are beyond rescue, you get creative. Patches become decorative, not just practical. You stitch on a flower here, a star there, whatever it takes to turn a rip into a statement. Children protest at first, but soon boast about their special clothes, each patch or odd button a badge of honour and proof of a mother's persistence. Special occasions bring out your inner designer. For the school play or the Sunday picnic, you cobble together costumes from the odds and ends in your sewing kit, making magic out of faded curtains and spare lace. If anyone asks where you shop, you smile mysteriously and mutter, "Custom couture." At the end of the day, your family is dressed, maybe not in the height of fashion, but always in love and ingenuity. You look at the parade of patched knees and bright hems, proud of the legacy you're passing down, resourcefulness, creativity, and the knowledge that true style isn't found on a price tag, but in the care and cleverness sewn into every single stitch. Your cabinets overflow with mismatched containers and lids that were separated in a tragic dishwasher incident. Every meal is a potential Tupperware showdown. Will you find the right lid before the casserole achieves sentience? You burp the lid with desperate hope, wondering if airtight means anything or if it's just another suburban myth. Welcome to the plastic battleground of 1950s leftovers management, where the miracle of modern food storage comes with its own set of daily dramas. The Tupperware revolution promised a new age of convenience, but nobody warned you that the real challenge would be organising your kitchen around a chaos of pastel-hued containers, each with its own temperament and mysterious origin story. Your cabinets are an archaeological dig, layers of bowls, mismatched lids, and the occasional rogue measuring cup peeking out from the shadows. The evening meal is barely over before the leftovers parade begins. You stand, ladle in hand, surveying the battlefield, last night's potatoes, half-eaten, a scoop of casserole, on its third appearance, and a spoonful of peas you're contractually obligated to save, even though everyone knows they'll be quietly disposed of next week. You reach for a container, confident you remember its matching lid. You don't. No one does. The Tupperware lid drawer is where hope goes to die. You sift through stacks of turquoise, pink and daffodil yellow lids, each a slightly different diameter, each a reminder of some long ago party where you traded a decent cake recipe for a small piece of sanity. You try one lid, then another. Too small, too large, not quite circular, possibly not even Tupperware at all. Somewhere you're sure there's a secret society dedicated to matching lost lids, and you join it if they ever sent you an invitation. Once a container is finally paired with its mate, you confront the second hurdle, the burp. Every commercial swears by it. Press the lid, hear the gentle puff of escaping air, and rest easy knowing your coleslaw is safely entombed until further notice. In practice, the burp is a mixture of wishful thinking and muffled cursing, as you press, squeeze and twist the lid until it either seals or flings peas across the kitchen. You sometimes wonder if the only thing actually airtight is your skepticism. The next ordeal is fitting the containers back into the cabinet. There's an unspoken agreement in every household. Open the Tupperware cupboard at your own risk. You wedge bowls behind stacks of mixing cups, hoping the precarious arrangement holds until the next unsuspecting victim, usually your spouse, dares to retrieve a single container and is rewarded with a plastic avalanche. You've considered drawing up a warning sign, but the chaos is now part of your home's unique charm. Tupperware parties are another chapter in the ongoing saga. You gather with neighbours, swap stories, sample dubious gelatin salads, and listen to promises about revolutionary stain-resistant bowls. You make a mental note to never store anything red in the good container, and you add another odd-shaped server to your collection, knowing full well you'll never see its matching lid after the second wash. Despite all the hassle, there's a peculiar comfort in the ritual. The gentle snap of a lid, the soft click as a bowl stacks perfectly, these are small, hard-won victories. On those rare nights when you find the right container and the right lid on the first try, you briefly consider running for mayor. You stash away leftovers with the secret hope that tomorrow the peas will taste better, or at least inspire less mutiny. Of course, next week, the cycle begins again. More meals, more containers, more lids that vanish into the great unknown. But in the end, you persevere, a champion of containment, a warrior against spoilage, and the only person in the house who understands that airtight is both an aspiration and a punchline. So you burp the lid, shove the container into the cupboard, and close the door quickly, praying nothing shifts. Because in the Tupperware trials, it's not just the leftovers you're saving, it's your sanity. When the chores are done, or mostly ignored, you gather the family around the glowing altar of the living room TV. There's only one channel, everyone wants to watch something different, and the youngest is on antenna duty, performing a bizarre ballet of arm positions to chase away static. If the picture is clear for more than 5 minutes, you quietly suspect witchcraft. In the 1950s, TV time is not just entertainment, it's ceremony. The day's chaos slows, the dishes are stacked, and the laundry is momentarily forgotten. There's a hush in the house, an anticipation thick enough to butter your toast with. You dim the lamps, herd the family onto the best seats, and ready yourselves for whatever black and white wonders await. This is your window to the wider world, a world that, most nights, comes in the form of a sitcom, a variety show or a game show that everyone seems to have strong, often conflicting opinions about. Seating is a strategic negotiation. The best spot, front and centre, close enough to feel the TV's warm hum but not so close you'll ruin your eyes forever, is a coveted throne, and arguments over who gets it have their own unspoken rules. The family dog, sensing the gravity of the hour, wedges itself between cushions, perfectly blocking the screen for at least one person. Pillows are adjusted, blankets draped, and the popcorn, if you're lucky, passed around in a bowl big enough to spark minor squabbles over the biggest pieces. Once everyone is settled, the antenna ritual begins. The youngest child, chosen for their flexibility and perceived willingness to suffer, is appointed keeper of the signal. Under the watchful gaze of parents and siblings, they contort themselves into ever more improbable positions, arms raised, head tilted, one leg outstretched, all in pursuit of that elusive moment of static free bliss. The family provides a running commentary. No, a little to the left. Hold it right there. Don't breathe. The child, temporarily transformed into a living lightning rod, learns the true meaning of family sacrifice. With the screen finally flickering into something recognizable, faces, sets, applause, the hour begins. The family is united in silence, at least until the first commercial, when a new debate erupts over the relative merits of dish soap brands or which car your next-door neighbour will never afford. Every so often, the picture dissolves into a snowstorm of static, triggering a mass groan and another round of antenna acrobatics. The programming is a curated mystery box. You might catch a vaudeville act, marvel at news from faraway cities, or play along at home with a game show that makes you question both your trivia knowledge and your marriage. Laughter floats through the room, punctuated by groans, gasps, and the sharp shh from anyone trying to follow a plotline through the haze of sibling banter. There's only one channel, but it feels like a shared adventure, part spectacle, part social event, and always slightly unpredictable. Sometimes the dog starts to bark at a cowboy on the screen, or the oldest child launches into a critique of the acting. Someone invariably tries to adjust the volume, overshoots, and you're briefly deafened by a jingle so catchy it will haunt your dreams. You savour the rare moment when everyone laughs at the same joke, or when the show ends with a cliffhanger that provides fuel for days of speculation. When the TV flickers off, the magic dissipates. The family disperses, some to bed, some to finish forgotten chores, some to argue about who left popcorn kernels in the cushions. The youngest, released from their antenna duties, shakes out their limbs and demands the good seat next time. The living room grows quiet, lit only by the soft afterglow of the cathode ray tube. You pause, reflecting on the ritual you've just shared, a communal hour of escape, connection, and occasionally blurry wonder. You tidy up, fluff the pillows, and smile at the echo of laughter still hanging in the air. In the end, TV time isn't just about what's on the screen, it's about the small, sacred chaos of sharing it all together. And if tomorrow the signal goes fuzzy, you'll be ready, with a willing antenna operator and another bowl of popcorn prepared to chase away the static once again. So tonight, as you settle into your perfectly temperature-controlled bedroom, perhaps under blankets that never had to air dry in the January wind, spare a quiet moment for the women who conquered each day with nothing but elbow grease, determination, and a heavy dose of ingenuity. The 1950s housewife fought her daily battles in a flurry of soap suds and starch, navigating a world where stains were mortal enemies, and modern convenience meant maybe not hauling water by the bucket. She managed families, finances, dinner parties, and existential laundry crises, sometimes all before breakfast. It's easy now to laugh at the quirks, the relentless ironing, the towering stacks of dishes, the mysterious stains that defied every soap known to man. But for millions of women, this was survival, creativity under pressure, patience measured out in spoonfuls of Ovaltine, and a kind of stubborn optimism that kept the wheels turning even when the jello refused to set. Their struggles, both comic and real, built the foundations of comfort that so many take for granted now. So, as you listen to the quiet hum of your refrigerator and the soft click of your programmable coffee maker, maybe whisper a little thank you to those who came before, who invented shortcuts, forged community, and somehow kept the show running with nothing but bobby pins and hope. Because history isn't just about grand events and bold inventions. Sometimes it's the small daily acts of perseverance that change everything. Close your eyes and breathe easy. The chores are done for today, the laundry can wait until tomorrow, and you're allowed, just for a while, to rest. You're not alone in the dark. You're carried on the stubborn, sometimes absurd, always inspiring resilience of the people who did what needed to be done, and somehow kept a sense of humour about it. Good night, and may your dreams be as restful as a Sunday afternoon with absolutely no ironing left to do.